Hello everybody, my name is Jacob. Welcome to a different kind of video. I am here with Professor J, as many of you
Hey, thanks
know.
for having me.
And so, given his recommendation of Resident Evil 7 for me, and keeping in with the spooky spirit, I figured it would be really cool to do kind of a talk back. Now that I've beaten the game, you're very familiar with the Resident Evil franchise, and 7 in particular, and I am still very much a novice, so I figured it would be fun to just kind of discuss back and forth um, just the game overall. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to hearing what your impressions of it were, particularly after playing Resident Evil 2 Remake as kind of your entry point into the franchise, because they're very different experiences.
So my basic thoughts after RE7 are I really, really, really enjoyed it. If I had any nitpicks, it would be I think the ending kind of sucks. I don't think it's bad, but like I don't think the plot ending is bad. I really liked the plot ending. I think specifically what
Mhm.
I'm talking about is the last fight. I thought really sucked. It was just, and that's kind of like my other big thing is I don't know if it was just because I was becoming more familiar with the game and the world and the
Mhm.
controls, but as the game progressed, I was less and less scared. Like that first, um, I guess pretty much before Marguerite, after the Marguerite fight was when it started to trail off. There were still points with Lucas where I was really unnerved because of his whole Saw shenanigans. But like, I guess once Lucas kind of disappeared, like the Swamp Thing battle happened was like really when I was like, well, see, not even that though, because the boat was like. I don't know if I was scared on the boat because of the
Right.
atmosphere, or if I was scared because it was like, we're not giving you anything.
And I think that the boat segment is actually one of the best things that Resident Evil 7 does, because what you're describing is something that basically every Resident Evil game suffers from, especially the modern ones, 4 and onward. The closer you get to the end, the more you become the one-man army, and it really becomes more about action and less about horror. But the boat kind of does reset the game in a sense, especially before the flashback portion, when you really have
Oh,
nothing.
yeah, the flashback portion, I was like, oh, we literally have a machine gun. Okay. like, um, but yeah, there were so many elements in. I know we're recording this before before the final episodes have actually hit. But there were a lot of moments post flashback, even knowing like, okay, I'll probably get the submachine gun at some point here, where I was like, I have 3 bombs. Let's kind of just tiptoe around
Right.
here. Um, and like,
It reminded me a lot of Eventide Island and Breath of the Wild. You know, you're
oh
a good
god,
chunk of the way
the
through the
island I
game, and then
still
all of a
haven't
sudden,
beat.
right, all of a sudden, after you're completely OP, they hit you with this challenge where it's like, okay, well, how good are you when we take away all your toys? And it really does kind of reset the game in a very fun way.
It's one of my favorite parts of Breath of the Wild. I'm
Mhm.
post Master Sword and I still haven't beat that area. The oh my god, that giant. He's the worst part of the entire thing.
Well,
Um,
let's go back to RE7.
yeah. So I want to touch on the beginning
Yeah.
first
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think it's a fabulously strong opening in numerous aspects, not just plot, but just the way that it like. I know there's been a lot of talk in like I feel like the last decade in video games and movies and stuff with like subverting expectations.
Hmm.
But I really do think it does it in such a strong way. Um, Specifically with the house, because that demo, the kitchen demo that they showed off at E3 and that was available to play, was just that house. So I
Right.
fully went in expecting, okay, this will be the hub, and there will be
Hmm.
like areas like staircases and stuff that'll take me to other areas, but like this will be the
Right.
hub, and they're like, no, no, it's not. Even the basement where like right before you get your hand chopped off, where like
Hmm.
um Mia lunges out from that little area where the door that's boarded up. Do we even go down there? I can't remember. Or is that just boarded up forever?
Well, she lunges up at you from the staircase in the darkness. So, like,
right.
you
That's
open the
right
door and
before
you
you
look
fight
down
her.
into a staircase. And
Um,
I'm not. I think that we are up. I think we go down there at some point. I want to say, I don't know. It's been a while, but yeah. So you have your different areas. Like, you have the guest house where you start, and we think that that's the hub. And Resident Evil has this habit of jumping from location to location within the game, having 3 to 5, but they do a really good job of keeping it more or less centralized, because you have your guest house, you have the main house, you have the old house where Marguerite is, you have the barn, and then the only time where we really like leave is the boat and the salt mines. So
yeah,
they
the
do a
salt
really good
mines
job of making
were...
it all feel connected.
Salt mines I got, like... I don't know if you've played the first Outlast.
I've seen gameplay, yeah.
But the like last hour of the first Outlast, I was like, this is feeling almost exactly like this. I don't think there's a salt mine, but they go down to like a white area with like gates and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of talking about the beginning gets into an aspect that I absolutely love about RE7, that after I beat the game, there's a group, I think I've told you about them, called Easy Allies. They're games journalists. Mm-hmm. They do streaming. One of them, my favorite member, his name is Michael Huber. He's very like hype focused. He's like, yeah, we'll get hyped. He's a very underdog kind of guy. His like motto is swimming in sevens. He's like, a 7 out of 10 is still good. There's still good stuff there. We're swimming in sevens. He's a huge Resident Evil fan. And so they streamed the whole game start to finish on launch day. So I went back and watched that once I had played the game. And even just at the very beginning, the fact that you can pick up your hand after it gets chopped off, I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my absolute favorite things about RE7. That I kind of noticed in the remake of 2, but not as much here, where there were so many times where I was like, oh, I can do that instead of that. Like, he straight up got in the car in the garage before Jack was able to pull him out, whereas I could not, and Jack kept pulling me out.
Stagger him! Okay, get in the car! Oh, God! I was right, though. That has to be it. Oh, shit!
And, like, so many different ways to go about finding things to find. Like what you were telling me, the toy shotgun. I didn't know until I watched their live stream that, oh, you take the toy shotgun, you get the broken shotgun, you can repair it, and it's a better shotgun. I had no idea.
Right.
Like...
Yeah. It's a game that definitely rewards creativity, inventiveness, multiple playthroughs. I mean, most Resident Evils do, but to a different degree, most definitely.
I am very, very excited to do... Halloween night, I'm going to attempt a 4-hour run for that achievement. I'm very excited.
That's exciting.
But even just the, like, tiny little details of... I don't know, you might have noticed this, I don't know, but if you look at the, like... There's the note, it says, like, Jack hired a contractor to build the house. The name of the contractor he hired is the architect of the Spencer Mansion. Yeah. Which is... There's so many shadow puzzles, and which the shadow puzzles are also great.
Yeah, I really liked how I kept hearing you in the playthrough say, like, where does this tie into Resident Evil? And there are tiny little nods throughout. You don't get the big tie-in reveal until, like, the last act, really. But there are moments, leading up to it where you can say, for the big fans, they're going to see that and say, hey, I know who that is. I know what that is.
It almost feels like... It feels like when there's, like, a reboot of a film franchise, like, 20 years after the fact that is trying to stand on its own and still has those little sprinkles and nugget. Like, in a way, it reminds me of the Evil Dead reboot, which I hated, but, like, has sprinkles throughout, and then at the very end, you see, like, Bruce Campbell come out and groovy. But, like, I've got the Evil Dead shirt for the spooky season. Evil Dead 2 is my favorite.
Should have worn my Resident Evil shirt. Missed opportunity.
I found a great... I can't remember if I sent it to you or not. There's a great shirt that's the poster for Vertigo, where he's like falling in the spiral, where it's Chris's silhouette and it's the Umbrella logo. It says Resident
Nice.
Evil. It's pretty great.
That's cool.
But I noticed in 2 that there is a huge emphasis on giving you supplies, but still trying to make you feel like you're helpless. You mentioned to me that you were like, I don't know how you're missing all this ammo. I don't know how you're alive with, like, you have so little ammo. And
Right.
in a way, that's what I want out of a Resident Evil game. I'm coming to learn is I want that, like, I have 3 bullets.
Right.
The Jack fight that I literally spent 2 hours trying to beat, even with the shotgun. That I'm so glad I didn't have more difficulty after that, just because I think that one was just a small area. But, like, even stuff like that, like, I beat Jack in a different way than I saw other people beat him.
Right.
Like, I saw some people just unload on him even when he had the, like, scissors. They, like, didn't go for the chainsaw. They just kept unloading on him. Which, I will say, this is such a tiny nitpick. When I got the chainsaw, I went over to try to unlock the door, because I was like, I don't think I can beat him. Can I just unlock the door and run? I would have liked if that had been an option. If you somehow had gotten over there for long enough, if you could have just run.
Yeah, it's one of those suspension of disbelief things where they don't anticipate you figuring out what you're supposed to do that soon, and they lock you into the area.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
it makes sense.
It's like when I play Borderlands 3, I'm like, I beat the story, the villains are dead, but somehow all of their minions are still here, infinitely respawning. But yeah, I love the way it plays. Not just the first person aspect, but it really does. I think the way that it slowly doles out upgrades to you is super smart. Not just in weapons, but in those stabilizers, for the health
stabilizers is one of them.
The health and the ammo, or in the reload. Because I didn't bother with the reload because I was kind of like, I'm sure that would be helpful, but in these scenarios, I imagine having more health is more helpful. And I didn't realize until Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you ever end up going for the mag?
No, I did not have enough. Before the salt mines, I think, because that's the last opportunity they give you, I was one short of getting the reload. So not even the mag. But of course,
gotcha.
Looking over through, I want to go back and get like all the notes and all the achievements and stuff, and like I know where another stabilizer is that was one of the most bonkers. Do you know where the wooden axe goes? Do you find with the shotgun?
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane.
Shadow puzzle.
That's insane.
There's a lot of stuff hidden in the yard. If you take a stimulant and just look in the yard, there's so much stuff.
And like that's one of the things
where deck and in tall grass, like all over the place.
Even now that more of the stuff has come out, I think you can understand. Like you can speak. I'm looking for stuff. I'm not like blazing through. I'm looking in environments, and I'm still somehow not finding half of this. The VHS tapes are crazy, which is a perfect segue. I am okay. I liked that I didn't find the VHS tapes. I think I prefer that. Specifically because even though they have really cool plot stuff, if I had the birthday party sequence would have been far less exciting to me had I known what to do going in. I still
the only thing you're missing out on is a little bit of story, a little bit of lore.
Yeah,
really.
Which I kind of liked. Like there is some the fact that I had no idea what happened to the TV crew. I was like, I don't know where they are. Are they dead? Have I killed them?
We knew one of them.
We
knew Andre was super dead.
I didn't know. Well, Andre was dead, but like the crispy body after the barn fight.
Yep.
That was the camera guy as a warning.
Clancy.
Had no idea.
Yep.
Grandma. 1408. You're next. How comforting.
Right, and so to a certain extent, like, whatever. But if you have watched the tape and you're like, you see Clancy actually die on camera, and then you see his body, it may hit a little bit harder potentially.
Yeah. It definitely spooked me, just the fact of, like, this is just a charred body. I haven't really had any experiences with fire so far, so what is this thing?
Right.
But I love how, even despite that, like, it's a testament to them thinking out all the different ways that people might play, that the thing still scrawls. I think it's even a different place. Like, doesn't it, on Clancy, it scrawls the, like, passcode in his hand, and for Ethan, it scrawls it in his arm.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But, like, even those, like, differences, like, they're thinking out, like, someone might not see that. We have to make sure they can still complete this. Because I still ended up figuring it out in the same exact way. Like, that's what... And you can hear me. It's laughable if you played the game. You can hear me go, like, should I be worried about that liquid? Is that something I should be concerned about? It keeps going.
It's pouring out.
But there's just a lot of that, like, thinking about all the different ways that people could solve these. The shotguns. The different pistols. Like, it's such a... It's layered in that sense in a way that I really was not expecting.
Right. There's a puzzle aspect to it, but there's also kind of a, like, search and find aspect too, because if you don't find the photographs about the hidden gun repair kits, then you can't find the hidden gun repair kits, and it doesn't matter whether or not you have the broken gun. So it's kind of it's a fun layered, like, chain of quests, which is kind of cool.
In like me going back and, like, okay, I want supplies, and me going back and finding the grenade launcher, that if I hadn't gone back, they don't hand you the grenade launcher, they don't say go back to this area. Like, you find the clues of, like, there's plans for a weapon, but that's about it.
Yeah, and in some Resident Evil games, they will hand you a gun that you miss later on. This is not one of them. I know in RE2 it was the same thing. Like, I never found the flamethrower, and they don't give you the flamethrower. So when you run into the the plant zombies, you've got to shoot them in the little spots. You can't light them on fire. So.
That was a pain in the ass to get to and back from, but that was very helpful.
I loved your reaction to the flamethrower in this game. The fact that you get to assemble it out of found.
Oh my god, it was so good. In the Mia flashback, I was like, that looks like a thing that I can have. Could I have that now, please? But again, like, setting those seeds. That was a scenario that I do think the VHS tape was great, because then when I got there and I found it, I was like, oh, I know that. Give that to me. That would be very helpful. With all the bugs. Oh.
And that's one good thing about the tapes, is it allows you, once you arrive to what would otherwise be a new area, you kind of have at least a little bit of insight into the way it's laid out, for example, and you can focus more on enemies or hunting for items. You kind of know the lay of the land a little bit. So it helps in familiarizing you with it that way.
Yeah. I think my biggest criticism, outside of, like, I think the biggest thing that does bug me outside of the ending is some of the boss fights. In the sense that with Jack and Marguerite, the first Jack fight, it was kind of the sense of, I know the point is to throw you in there, because you're like, oh, I'm scrounging for supplies and stuff, I gotta, like, fight with just my wits. But there was that Jack fight, just me going, do I do this? Is this working? I don't know. The first Marguerite fight, where you're in the pit, I hated, because I was like, I don't know what to do.
You kept trying to climb up.
Like, is shooting her working? Is the flamethrower even hitting her? Like, I don't know what to do. I literally just got lucky that I was like, I'll just unload the flamethrower on her, and that happened to work.
Right, and it kind of makes sense, if the bugs are very susceptible to the fire, then the lady who's summoning them might also be. So there's a trail of breadcrumbs, but there is a certain amount of, trial and error involved.
Yeah. My third attempt fighting Jack, where it was like, hey, the broken shotgun. And I was like, the what? And then that was where everything just became easier.
Right.
Oh my god, hold on. I can't believe I almost forgot about this. The molded. holy shit, that was
Yeah.
So I was
So the first time you run into them is in the basement, which is
no
already scary.
the first time was
Isn't it?
the shadow puzzle, sneaking through the room with the deer statue.
Oh,
And
that's
just
right.
like
One comes
peels
off
from
the
the wall.
That's right.
There was a moment like in the first couple episodes where I was like, is this going to be a Resident Evil game without zombies? And technically it is, because they're not technically zombies. But the twist on them was so, like, especially finding out later, like, actually what they are. Like, like her, like, I don't know if they just say her vomit just as, like, shorthand, or if it's actually confirmed to be, like, her vomit, but, like, it's so... It's
I
such
don't know why they'd call it vomit if it wasn't.
It's such an interesting take.
And it makes sense that there are so few of them, all things told, within the house, because you see that sheet of the people, like dead, turned, etc., 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 and there aren't but so many names. So it makes sense that these molded that you run into are kind of few and far between, because each one of these was someone who was abducted. So it's kind of cool, and it adds a layer to it.
It would not at all surprise me if you... Well, once you get later, like, outside of the house, like the salt mine, there's a lot more, which, I mean, maybe you could just say is like, oh, the salt mine workers or whatever. But, like, within the house specifically, it would not surprise me at all if you counted all of the individual ones and it's the same number as on the sheet.
That'd be pretty cool.
It's definitely a detail that I would not put past them. But, I also did learn Shinji Mikami, who's doing Evil Within now, the creator of Resident Evil. He and his team at Tango Gameworks all got copies of 7 before it came out to play, and he was like, I love this. This is great. Which that warms my heart a little bit. But I want to get more into, like, specific character stuff now. Because we've talked about, like, I like how it plays, I like how it begins and how it, like, kind of pulls you in.
We'll get into plot later.
We got to talk about the introduction of the family, the dinner scene, which is
very Texas Chainsaw, House of a Thousand Corpses kind of vibe.
It actually reminds me of, this is going to be weird, and I would be genuinely surprised if you've seen this, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, specifically. Because the second one...
I have not.
The first one is very intense, like horror movie. The second one is almost a comedy. It's like a very black comedy. Where, like, the poster, when it first came out in theaters, was, like, Leatherface and then some of his minions doing the Breakfast Club like this pose. And the way the, like, humor is, like, just grabbing Lucas and chopping his hand off, like, out of nowhere. Like, it is weirdly funny in a really dark way. Like, you're scared, but you're also like, like, it is such a, not just a great introduction for them, but, like, leaving you there. I was like, should I move? Do I move? What is about to...
You rock the chair.
And then even, like, that sneaking around, that leads into another, like, thing that I saw that I never experienced. Did Jack ever chop your leg off when you played it? I saw that after the fact. It's like, that's so cool!
You have to crawl over and get your own leg back.
Get the health, and, like, that's how, like, contextualizing that, him breaking out of the wall that's in, like, every trailer, that I was like, as I'm walking through the hallway, I was like, I know this happens. When does this happen?
Breaking through walls is a huge trope, as you've already seen in Resident Evil 2.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. X loves to break through walls.
I will never forget the helicopter moment in RE2 as just me standing there going, like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
I think I legitimately, like, almost...
And there's a lot of that, they kind of revived that Mr. X nemesis, like, being stalked thing with Jack to a certain extent in this game.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
kind of the ever-present threat, more so than Lucas and Marguerite, who kind of like have their portion of the game. We see Jack over and over again.
I was definitely kind of half expecting Jack to just keep pop. Like, oh my god. Have you seen It, the remake, the first one?
Mm-hmm.
You know the scene with Egg Boy where he's like, the legs are just walking down the steps and you see it's half of the kid?
Yeah.
I almost half expected when I went back into the house to find the key cards to just see Jack's legs. That would have... I would have lost my mind. That would have been the worst.
Gross. Yeah, and I think that what Resident Evil 7 does so well, compared to a lot of other Resident Evil games, is they really flesh out the Bakers and make them like real people, and you have a lot of face time with them and exposure to them, and they have personalities, and you find out later, the backstory, motivation, all this stuff. And they do such a better job making these feel not just like, okay, here's the villain for this part of the game. Like, they're all connected, and you're in their home, which I think adds another layer to it as well.
Like, the flashback scene where he's just like, no, shh, it's okay. I'm not a killer, son. Like, I was speechless, just like, whoa. I do... Kind of getting into later game stuff, I don't like the choice. That felt really, like, backhanded. Like, I was like, who do you choose? This woman from the phone or your wife? Like...
Right.
That...
And there are different endings, too. And there's, like, a good ending and a bad ending.
I've heard that choosing Mia is, like, the canonical ending, which makes sense.
It is.
But yeah, I do also want to say, I've heard you lambast Ethan, like, as long as I've heard you talk about this game.
Yeah.
I didn't hate him as much as you do. I really liked Mia, specifically. I liked her more than I did Ethan. But I didn't...
She's a better, more fleshed out character.
Oh, yeah.
The problem that I have with Ethan is that compared to basically every other Resident Evil character, he's the true, like, blank slate tabula rasa character, that you're just meant to pour yourself into, like playing as like Link or Mario.
Right.
Like they don't really talk that much. They're just meant to like be your avatar in the world. And so Ethan says some stuff here and there that's very relatable. He's like the everyman, but I think that comes at the expense of true character development. Like, what do we know about him other than that he's married to Mia? Mia disappeared. He goes after. We don't know, what he does for a living, what, how he and Mia met. Is he connected in any way to any of this stuff, or is it just through her? Like, I felt like I needed more about him, and we don't learn more about him throughout the game at all. We learn a lot more about her, which is why she's so compelling, but we learn nothing about him, even to the point where in the promotional material for Resident Evil Village right now, if you look at the character page, when they show Ethan, in that picture, he's holding his gun like this, so you still can't see his face, which is also in shadow. And it's like, come on. Like, if you want us to care about him, make him someone. Make him anyone, I don't know. I'm
wondering if that is the sense of if they're trying to keep him an everyman or if they're trying to build something. Because it's... I am kind of upset. I hope that there's more to this. But the fact that, like, the first trailer for Resident Evil Village ends with Chris straight up just like, oh, so Mia's dead in this game, I guess. Like, I hope that's a hallucination or there's something more to that. I was thinking in terms of, like, since there are werewolves and vampires and witches, maybe he, like, that's why Ethan goes there. He brings Mia and he's like, could you... like, he knows something, they're vacationing there, I don't know, something along those lines, but, like, I would be genuinely...
we'll find out more next year.
I would be genuinely disappointed if it was just like, nope, she's dead. Because that...
Yeah, I mean, they show him shoot her in one of the trailers, but if we know anything about Mia, it's that she's bad at dying.
Oh, yeah. That was... The most suspension of disbelief moment in the entire game was... getting sucked out of the boat like a frickin' Tomb Raider game. Like...
Mm-hmm.
And I
And
know
she just grabs hold of something without both of her shoulders being ripped out of their sockets. You know.
I know that they're like, we found her by the tankard, whatever, but she definitely is like underwater for a good chunk of time, it looks like. So maybe that's like, I don't know, maybe that's
She was also infected already at that point, so
I was gonna
Evelyn's
say
powers we know give people regenerative abilities. That
maybe
makes sense.
Evelyn was just like, I really like you, so I don't know.
Mhm.
Now I do now speaking of Evelyn, I want to get into like more plot stuff because I was
Okay.
really I am this is one of those few scenarios where I predicted the end and I'm okay with it. Because you heard me from the very beginning, like,
Mhm.
we don't see Grandma in a lot of pictures. Grandma's just here. I don't think you're Grandma.
Mhm.
Because especially what Jack says, like,
Right.
talking about her power and, like, taking it from her, I was like, Grandma, like, sucking the power, that seems... but I like that it was that sense of, they were misdirecting you with it. Because, like, the birthday scene, that picture, you see a old woman. And that really threw me off. I was like, is this right? Like, I thought, like,
Right,
for a
but
little
we
bit...
don't know when the picture was taken. It could have been last week for all we know.
Yeah, like, is Evelyn actually dead? Is she, like, in her head? Like, come to find out about
And I don't know if you
reading.
picked up on this. Oh, when you play it again for Halloween, notice this. In the first scene at the table with all of them, all three of the bakers refer to one another by name. No one ever mentions Grandma or
Well,
talks about her at all.
I noticed they don't do that the whole game. The only
Yeah,
sense
no one
of
mentions her.
Grandma that you get is that picture in the birthday sequence, and then
Mhm.
I had to look up how to spell Marguerite's name at some point, so I looked at the wiki. There is that Grandma in that picture is their actual, like, mother of the
Oh,
bakers. So
really?
I don't know if that was
Interesting.
taken before Evelyn or after or like what, but
Sorry, cat's jumping into frame.
um
Yeah.
but I
Yeah, they do
really
a good job though, and I like that she kind of teleports around the house. And
oh
we find
yeah.
out later that a lot of what she does is hallucination. So you never really know if she's present in any of those locations at all. Did you ever try to shoot her?
Yes, I did. I did either before or after the Jack fight, it straight up would not
Yeah.
let me.
Yeah, Ethan holsters. He holds his gun up. Like, I'm
Which
not
I
going to shoot
guess
an old
makes
lady.
sense. Like,
Right.
I'll shoot the guy with the giant chainsaw scissors, but an old lady, she's not doing anything.
Exactly. Little do we know.
Which now, in my mind, once you go back to, like, where you go back into the guest house for, like, the final chunk of the game, made me think, like, when Mia gets grabbed and, like, taken through the wall, is old lady Evelyn doing that, or is Jack doing that? Because
Right.
I have the sight of, like, old grandma grabbing and busting through the wall.
That would be ridiculous.
But
So we find out, that she's got these spores and that she's able to mentally control. So to a certain extent, it is her. She's the one who's willing it. It's pretty cool.
I did notice going back at the end of the game through the guest house, the picture of her that's on that mantle in the room where Mia gets taken.
EV001.
But it's so split second, blink and you'll miss it. Like, even if
Yeah.
you look at that, by the time you get to the end of the game, you don't remember that. No one...
And do you remember what you're doing when Jack busts through and grabs Mia?
You're looking at the doll.
The doll, which looks like a little girl.
Mm-hmm. Which I also did not notice, freaked me out. Wish I recorded it. On replaying it to, like, try it to, like, go through and, like, attempt the 4-hour just to, like, get my feet wet again. The Mia doll on the ground is super freaky. Like,
Yeah.
my immediate question was, where did this come from? Who made this?
Right. And it makes you think of the whole, like, family motif that we see from the boat moving onwards. Actually, we have the family motif from the very beginning. But, they really start hammering it home once the boat segment in the flashback occurs.
I also like a lot, normally, and I think you're in kind of the same boat with Control right now, there is that sense of there's two different kinds of mystery plots. One is the one where you're getting just enough information to still kind of be pulled along on a thread, and one where you're like, you're giving me literally nothing. And I think, I don't want to talk about Control right now, but I think Control and Resident Evil are both in the vein of, like, they're giving you just enough to keep, like, the first half of Resident Evil 7 before the boat, I was like, are you, Mia, is this your actual family? Because you keep saying dad, and, like, you're talking about babysitting, like, like, I don't, it was so just fascinating to me, and now, I mean, specifically talking about the ending, that I loved plot-wise, that I hated fighting. It was, I don't know if you've played any of the Dead Space games.
I haven't.
Those are excellent. There's some disparity on whether or not, Dead Space 1, the character's all silent, and it's all, like, in a space station, like, mining facility. Dead Space 2 is in, like, a more, like, residential space station, and he talks. I personally think 2 is better, just because the environment's more varied, but those are both excellent. I think they're very readily available on PS3 and 360. Those are, if you ever need, like, a spooky game, those are top tier. I recommend both of them. Don't play 3. 3's only fun if you get someone to play with you, because the co-op mode, different people will see different things. So you'll be like, why did you walk over that thing that's there? And you're like, what are you talking about?
What thing?
But 3 otherwise sucks.
About the ending of the game, though.
But the ending of Resident Evil 7 kind of does the ending of Dead Space 1, where horror game and then big things sticking up and, like, grabbing you and attacking. Because that's what happens to Evelyn. You, like, stab her with the cure, and she turns into this big monstrous thing.
She melts.
God, that was...
Oh, this is gross. This is very gross. Whoa!
The melting is pretty horrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like taking, Who Framed Roger Rabbit to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah. Ugh. Ugh. God, they're so...
Yeah, she turns into the giant thing. Ugh.
I want to play this in VR so bad.
The ending is a little... You're just basically in a room with Evelyn, just unloading on her face as it gets closer and closer to you, and then she turns into the giant growth. Whatever. So I agree that the last boss battle is a little underwhelming after how, impactful the other boss battles are leading up to that. Every encounter with Jack, even if it could be frustrating, like each one of them feels like you're actually fighting him. Even the last one, he's moving around the room, he's talking to you throughout the entire thing.
It is the easiest of his fights, but without a doubt it's still difficult. They do hand you so much shotgun ammo in that section. They're like, this is what we want you to use. But the thing that really took me out of that last fight, not so much the scale of it, was just the fact of, I tried to switch weapons, and I couldn't, and I realized, oh, so this is on rails, basically. Like, I can't die in this point. Like, this is just, okay, this is scripted now. And that, in particular...
once he's holding you... You can die.
Oh, you can? Oh.
You can die. I'm not talking about when it's like inject him with the serum, but when he pins you and you have like fixed perspective, if you don't unload on him adequately, he will just...
Oh, no. I mean the
there.
last fight. I mean Evelyn.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jack.
No, yeah.
Okay.
But like when you're out in the yard,
you
you can't switch weapons. It's like very clearly like, this is the end. This is scripted. We don't want you to die.
Yeah.
And that definitely, specifically the fact that you couldn't die, that took away from it more for me. I guess it was kind of a fun moment with what is the gun called?
The Wesker.
The Wesker. Oh my god, of course it is now.
Nice callback, right?
But like, I guess it's fine. Like, there's nothing really wrong with it. Just given everything that comes before, it does feel super underwhelming.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that's probably the weakest part of the game is the way that they wrap things up. Like it looks cool and it feels cool, but it seems very separated from the rest of the game in terms of the way that it plays and feels. It almost feels like more of a lead into the DLC, the first DLC where you play as Chris Redfield, than actually feeling connected to the rest of the game.
Which I have. I bought the season pass because I wanted the banned
Good.
footage and all that. I haven't touched any of it yet. I'm debating whether or not I want to do
Okay.
like playthroughs of it or just in my free time.
The two story DLC I would recommend definitely playing and possibly even recording. Like there's not a hero.
The banned footage stuff, like the poker stuff and all that, I was like,
yeah.
eh.
It's something you try once and you put down. But the first one, like Redfield actually goes after Ethan because we're not done with Ethan. He just runs away during RE7. So you actually get to kind of see that.
Wait, Ethan.
End.
Ethan's the main character.
Or, I'm sorry, not Ethan.
Do you mean Lucas?
Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering what happened to him.
Yes, Chris goes after Lucas in the first DLC, and the second one actually, you play as another member of the Baker family, Joe, who is, he is Lucas's uncle. He's Jack's brother, who lives out in the swamp, and it's called End of Zoe. He's trying to save Zoe's life in the canon storyline where you picked Mia so Zoe stays infected. Joe has to save her.
Interesting. I really want.
Let me tell you about Joe. Joe fights with his fists. He fights the molded. He's a big, strong Louisiana man, and he beats the hell out of molded and breaks their necks. Like he's like full pugilist, it is awesome.
I keep hearing about somebody named Hunk. Is that like kind of like him?
No, Hunk is like a super soldier who just has like all the guns. So He's not like Hulk where he's like a one-man army in that sense. He's a one-man army more in the Captain America sense of he is physically fit and strong enough to rip these things apart with his bare hands. And it's worth playing. It actually, I don't want to spoil too much, but it is pretty linked to the story as well.
Maybe I'll stream those instead of... No, I would want to record those for the channel, but those have definitely like jumped up my list. I've got a pretty decent list of stuff coming up soon, but those are definitely jumped up. But kind of wrapping up, closing thoughts, I guess specifically, like before we like wrap up, the ending like cutscene, like after Chris comes, I was thinking about that a lot, specifically in the sense that 7 was such a departure from what I know a Resident Evil game to be, and I remember when it was shown off at E3, when the kitchen demo happened, and they were like, "What is this game? Oh, it's Resident Evil," and people lost their minds. There's a great clip. I don't know if I've shown you. I'll send it to you. Of Easy Allies, because they all get dressed up in suits and they watch every E3 press conference where they're watching the Sony and they're all like really intense, like watching it, and they're like, 7, what is a Resident Evil? And they're all like, what? Losing their minds.
No. Nope. Never. 7 silent.
And like, given that it is,
it's first person.
Given that it is not only where it sits with the story, but the first person, I imagine this was a lot of people's first Resident Evil game, which is probably not a coincidence then that right after they remade 2 and 3 and put the remake of 1 out on PS4, the ending where it's just, he goes, when one door closes, another opens, and right as he says that, you see the Umbrella logo. I was like, I know that.
Right.
We're like, if you don't, and you go back through and you replay that after, and then you're, okay. Mia's somehow miraculously surviving. I want a DLC about that. Like, what the hell happened? Like, oh my god. Yeah. That was legitimately a little frustrating.
The Mia Zoe decision, when you choose who to cure. If you choose to cure Zoe, when you encounter Mia on the ship, because you still do, she's not able to resist Evelyn, and you have to actually murder her. So that's why she's able to survive in this timeline, because you gave her the cure, so she has enough of it in her to where she's able to actively resist Evelyn and get off the ship.
Oh my god.
So there's actually a canonical reason for it. It makes sense within the story. It's pretty cool.
Oh my god. I definitely one of the more unsettling moments in like all of video games is that very opening, the beginning of the game, not knowing what's going to happen and like sinking an axe into the neck of your wife is definitely unsettling.
Who then proceeds to chainsaw your arm off after stabbing your hand with a screwdriver into a wall. So there are a lot of very visceral moments in the game, and I think the first person perspective is what sells that so well. That and I wanted to talk about this earlier, but I don't know if you want to splice it at that point. The sound design in this game is next level, and the visuals they pop so well. Like they really sell the nasty, dirty, greasy nature of basically all the locations. So you really feel and can hear where you are, to the point where, especially in the main house early on, and in the old house, the guest house as well, you hear the creaks and groans, and the old clinking sounds coming from the plumbing, and every little sound makes you just stop and wonder, like, what was that?
A great example of that is the fact that, like, I have issues with bugs, but I've played plenty of other games that feature bugs. Skyrim doesn't really bug me with the giant spiders, because I just throw fire at them. Earth Defense Force, I don't know if you played any of those games or know those games. They are kind of low budget, like wave shooters or third person. The one that really hit it big in America was called Insect Armageddon, where it was literally, instead of fighting aliens or like nameless soldiers, you were fighting the like giant ants from like B movies and stuff like that. That stuff doesn't bother me. But the atmosphere, the way that I would like, the hives, the just grossness of it was ugh.
And if you have headphones on,
Ugh.
headphones, totally different experience.
Yeah,
it makes me wonder, like the VR, I can't even imagine how that is.
If once PS5 comes out, and we'll probably see some price cuts on some PS4 stuff, maybe you should pick up a PSVR headset for next Halloween, do a playthrough.
Oh man. The only thing that bothers me about that is like Ethan's arms, like his forearms float in space and they're detached. So it's a little wonky.
I've had a little bit of experience with VR, and I think if you get yourself situated with the experience with like a lighter game, like with like Astrobot's Playroom is like a pack-in or something, a little platformer. Once you get like the experience, it's a lot easier. I've heard it's easier in VR because in terms of aiming, you're like right where you look. That's where it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm upset because they never put the VR mode on PC.
That's a shame.
There were plans to, apparently, I think it was a license for a year, like only on PlayStation, and then they just never went back and added it. And there's been some fans attempting to patch it to work, but it's apparently it's not as good, but oh well.
That's a shame.
Yeah, so I enjoyed the talkback. I enjoyed discussing my thoughts. I think in terms of my very limited experience with Resident Evil, I think I like 2 a little bit more, just because I feel like 2... I don't feel like 2 loses that, like, scariness or, like, unsettlingness. Like, 7 does get it back with the boat, but I think 2 is more consistent in it. And even though I still felt unsettled and like, is Jack gonna pop up? Where is Jack gonna pop up? I don't think that matched Mr. X, because Mr. X legitimately, I was like, you're coming from anywhere. Whereas Jack, I was like, I think I've gotten away from him. I think I'm safe for a little bit. But Mr. X was so many moments where I was like,
scripted moments. So
many moments in 2 where I was like, come on, really?
And for many people, Resident Evil 2 Remake was the game of the year for 2019.
Oh, yeah.
It was that, or Fire Emblem Three Houses, a lot of people said, too. But, I can definitely see like Resident Evil 7. It's a very good game. Like if you look on Metacritic, it scores like somewhere in that low to mid 80s, something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So it's a good solid game. It's just a huge departure from what most Resident Evil fans know as Resident Evil. It's not the old tank control style of 1, 2, 3 and Veronica. It's not the hybrid action horror of 4, 5, 6. It's something that's entirely new. You're going back to those old horror roots and that survival aspect of it, but you're actually looking through the eyes of the character, which was a first time for the series. And I think because of that, there were some things that they were still working out, and I'm looking forward to see in Village how they build upon that now established first person viewpoint and really kind of milk that to sell the horror experience.
God, if Village is basically just like a roguelike with like you can do this any way you want, oh my god, I'm gonna sink my teeth into that game. I gotta once again, it is the aspect of like Cyberpunk. I will probably buy that game and play it nonstop, but I'm not pre-ordering until I see system specs. I gotta know if I can even run it, let alone record it. Because that looks like 7 I could run really, really well, but it's that jump between generations where I'm like, is that going to mean PC system specs jump? Like, But I guess if I was to compare my thoughts between 2 and 7, it would be like, I'll compare it to movies. I would equate Resident Evil 7 to Toy Story 3, and Resident Evil 2 Remake is like Toy Story 2. They're both very good, but 2 Remake is just like so fine-tuned and just
yeah.
Maybe it was just because it was my first Resident Evil. I don't know, but like I really do.
It's hard to beat that first impression. For me, my first one was 4, which many people agree is the strongest in the franchise, and I've beaten it multiple times at this point, and it's kind of hard to see past that and appreciate some of the other titles. Like I love 7, and I really like 5. Not a huge fan of 6, but who is, honestly. And I've played 2 Remake and the new Resident Evil 3, and I really enjoyed both of those. I beat both of them more than once, just because it was a fantastic experience. But there will always be a special place for 4 in my heart, always a special place for Leon, which, I think that for me, starting out with those really developed characters and playing through multiple titles before 7 is part of what sours me on Ethan a little bit. And he's only had 1 game. Right. So, I'm going to give him through the end of Village to develop to a point where I actually care, but they haven't done enough in 1 game to sell me on Ethan as an actual Resident Evil protagonist rather than this empty vessel. So I'm excited to see where things go in 2021.
I can't wait to. I definitely feel like you and I are going to get the 8 at the same time, play through it at the same time. I can't wait to not watch your playthrough at all until I'm done, and then subsequently watch each other's and go like, oh, you did that. I hope there's a lot more of the 7, like, you did that, well, I did that.
Right.
And yeah, can't wait for the inevitable talkback about 8.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have to do it.
I can't believe you haven't played 1, though. Like, the one that started it all. It's so cheap now and readily available. Like, I think it's even on Switch now.
It is. I read something somebody said the other day is, I can't wait for them to remake 1 in the style of 2 and 3. Like, give me a 1 that doesn't have tank controls. Give me a 1 where I have actual full agency over the camera and my character and can move in real time. Well, and I think that's kind of what I'm waiting for too. Like I have Revelations and Revelations 2, which I still haven't played, but I bought both of them and I intend to do them on the channel because they are a little bit more in that modern style where you have increased control over the character and the camera and stuff. And I feel like it's difficult to start with that and then take that away from yourself and really appreciate an older title. I've seen people play, 1, 2, and 3 online and Let's Plays and stuff like that. But having started with all of that control, it's kind of difficult to go back, I think.
The camera definitely, but I think in the remake they took the tank controls away. They have them as an option if you want to, but for the most part it's just your pretty typical regular style of controls. But yeah, I haven't played 2 either. I've heard one either. I've heard great things about it, but it is one of those things where I wonder if they will, since they technically did remake it.
Same thing with 0.
Zero is one, from what I've heard,
Zero
though,
hasn't been, so.
is one where people are like, oh, if they did remake Zero like 3 and 2, people would be like, oh, okay, you did that one. Alright. Like...
Yeah, most people are saying, like, next has to be 4 or Code Veronica. Yeah, that's what
Code Veronica would be more interesting to
would
me.
Make sense.
Because it's literally never been released on anything but the PS2. It had the, like, PS2 on PS3 thing, but other than that, it's only been on 2. That would be pretty big.
And chronologically, it makes sense. It makes sense to go 2, 3, Veronica. It's if they're going chronologically, but yeah.
But yeah, I am excited to continue to play more of the Resident Evil series. I'm almost, in a way,
glad you're hooked.
More excited to play 6 and Raccoon City than I am, like, 3 and 4, just because I'm like, I've tasted the best.
Right. 6 isn't the worst game in the series. If you're talking about spin-offs, Operation Raccoon City is, I think, the worst that I've played. Not I think, I know for a fact it's the worst. But like, everything that's numbered in the franchise that I've played, 4, 5, 6, 2 Remake, 3 Remake, 7, like, all of those games... Even when they're cheesy, even when it's more action than anything else, I still had fun with them. Operation Raccoon City was a dumpster fire. It felt more like a tech demo that wasn't seen through to the end.
From what I've heard, there is one that's worse, but you haven't played it, and I don't think you'll be able to. The multiplayer-only Umbrella Corps, like, Call of Duty style game that I don't even think has servers up anymore, because it tanked so hard.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, I didn't touch that one.
But yeah, I've heard that... I mean, there's not even any lore in that one. There's no story mode at all, so why bother?
Yeah. It's like picking up Mercenaries 3D on the 3DS. Like, it's just if you like Mercenaries mode from, 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So.
I'm upset that Revelations 1 or 2 doesn't have online co-op in any way. Like, they're so heavily co-op games, but it's only couch.
Right.
But
yeah.
On that note, that was a pretty fun, pretty lengthy discussion. If you liked this video, this kind of stuff, in a couple weeks, I don't know where you are exactly in it. I know where you've uploaded to because I watched all of those so far. We're going to be doing the same exact thing, except on your channel talking about Control, where I will probably spearhead most of the conversation, just like you did with your knowledge about Resident Evil. And I'm very excited about that, because we have the long, stalwart video game franchise versus the brand new IP that has maybe will do more things, has yet to be seen. It didn't sell super well, but at the same time, Remedy said, like, we're happy with this. It was, and Remedy was like, we're happy with the sales numbers. IGN gave it its Game of the Year, and like it was nominated for like 7 different awards at the Game Awards. Got nominated for best game for Game of the Year, 2 nominations for performance, one for Jesse and one for Dr. Darling, and like level design, environment, sound, visuals. It won environment, best environment, which is I love The Oldest House so much. I can't wait to talk about that with you.
You guys will have to look forward to that.
Yeah. All right. On that note, thank you everybody for watching. If you like the video, share the video if you want to share the video. Subscribe if you'd like to as well. That would really help me out. I have been Jacob, and you have been wonderful. And this has been our Resident Evil 7 talkback. This has also been Professor J.
Thanks for having me.
I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Adios!